Can you remember what it was like getting the part?
Yeah, I can. I was completely and utterly naive about the Avengers, because I'd been working at the Royal Shakespeare Company for a long time, and then I left them, and I did something called Sentimental Agent with Carlos, what was he called? Can you remember? I do remember we were filming somewhere, and it was supposed to be some exotic place, and there we were in Ongar with some palm trees, you know. Anyway, I did that, and then they asked me to audition for the Avengers, and I pitched up, and I hadn't seen it. I didn't know what it was about. I had absolutely no idea at all. But I tell you what was really nice was that Patrick Macnee was incredibly kind and helped me through my whatever it is I had to do. And I think he probably said a word in the producer's ear and said, "This is the girl I want." I don't know. But anyway, I got the job.
The story goes that the casting director, Dodie Watts, had seen you in an armchair theatre called the Hot House.
Oh, that's right.
And
yes.
I've got a clip from that, actually. So we just... can we see... can we have the clip, please? It's just showing Diana just prior to the Avengers.
Okay. I've never seen that. It was a really unhappy experience. The director, can you remember what he was called? Guy something, Hamilton.
Guy Hamilton, yeah.
And he'd actually cast his wife in the role. Ooh, sorry about that. He'd cast his wife in the part that I was playing, and then she fell ill. And then he cast me. But he hated me. And so did Harry. Oh, it was horrible.
But it was...
I mean, I think you people, so may I say this, behind what you see was agony.
Actually, that was the highest rated all-time episode of Armchair Theatre.
No.
It got more viewers than any other show. So, I mean, I think there was big pulling power in Harry H. Corbett at the time.
Yes, it was. He was a big, big, big star.
And
but he was so melancholy. He didn't like life. Isn't that sad?
And that, as I say, the story goes that when Dodie saw you in that she suggested that you might be right for the part. And you mentioned how generous Patrick was, and
Yeah.
I've heard that from a lot of people that work with him, that he was a tremendously generous actor and easy to work with. And we lost him earlier this year. I just wondered if you'd like to say a few things about working with him.
Well, he was just absolutely adorable. He loved his work. Well, we had that in common. And we had a lot in accord. We wanted to do the best we possibly could. We kept on finding dead bodies in this series. So, you know, they didn't write terribly witty things about finding dead bodies. So Patrick and I decided that we'd write our own scenes when we found dead bodies. And the producers were really kind and let us do it. And we were a real team. And even when I left, well, there were two aspects to my leaving. One was I just really, really wanted to go on and do other things. And I knew that if I stayed, I probably wouldn't. But I didn't want to leave Patrick because I loved him. And I felt as if I was ditching him. And I can only tell you that he was wonderfully generous about my leaving. And I will always, always be grateful to him for that. He didn't make me feel guilty. He said, yes, go. You've got to go and do other things and all that. So he was a deeply generous, dear, dear man. And I grieve his passing.
I think that rapport you had does show on screen. I mean, the relationship between the two characters is very, very strong in every episode, you know. Yes. And there was always speculation about whether they had once been lovers and now they were happily in each other's company without the need of the sexual tension. Did they ever give you notes to that effect?
No, we just played it out because it was there on the page, actually. I think, well, it's sort of, there is a history of relationships like this. Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn, and going back in time. And I think if you keep the sexual tension of, well, maybe they could, that permeates everything and keeps people guessing. And I think Patrick and I, although we never really discussed it, but I think it was tacit between the two of us.
You alluded earlier to the fact that sometimes when you're working on these things, there are agonies behind the scenes.
Yes.
And on that show, it must have been a punishing workload. You made 50 episodes in 2 years.
Yes, it was tough. It was really tough. They'd get, the car would be there at 5:30 in the morning, and then they'd drive you to the studio, and you'd sit there for an hour of makeup. I do have to say the makeup was, I was really beautifully photographed in that. And so probably it was worth it. But then we worked 12, 13, 14-hour days. We really did. And that episode, it was Patrick, I think it was Patrick's holiday. So he did the 3 or 4 scenes that he was involved in advance, and then I did that while Patrick was sunning himself somewhere.
And that was the norm, because there was an episode called The Girl from Auntie when you were on holiday.
Yes.
and he
Yes.
had his own episode. And there's lots of the iconographic things about the Avengers. The fashion stands out. What was that like?
Well, to begin with, it was John Bates, who I think he was very good with the trouser suits. And then Alan Hughes stepped in, and he was very good with the cat suits. Alan Hughes, thank God, got rid of the leather cat suits because they were deeply uncomfortable and hot and sticky. And suddenly I was dressed in elasticized stuff, which was so much better. But apart from anything else, it did show the body altogether better. And fashion was really quite important. I think it was one of the early television shows which was ahead in terms of fashion.
Yeah, I think it was very influential. I wondered did that fashion sense of the show, did you carry it off in your own life as well?
No, I was just getting into the most comfortable clothes possible to get to the studio.
Another thing that people talk about a lot when they look back at the Avengers are the cars. You drove those 2 Lotuses. What were the...
Oh, they were great. They were wonderful, but they were made of cardboard. I mean, you couldn't even say hello to a taxi because it would be just... it would be so condensed. It would be a harmonium, But Patrick and I, when we were driving in these beautiful, beautiful old cars, they were very hard to drive because they never got into gear properly. So the director would go action, and we'd supposed to sort of shoot off, and Patrick would be going trying to get us to go.
And of course, the show almost immediately took off internationally. Was that a big surprise? Had you expected that?
Well, to be perfectly honest, you got your nose to the grindstone, so you don't expect anything, and I had no idea of how far it had gone. I had no idea at all, and it was a nice surprise.
And they went into colour for the second season because the Americans now wanted to network the show, which was almost unheard of. Yes. And that must have brought a whole new set of problems in that for them.
Well, I don't remember the problems so much. Oh, by the way, what did you say? This had been
restored.
Yeah. I've been restored. I have to say, I was thrilled. He couldn't do one step further and restore. No, the colour was a major step forward. It is so interesting because I never thought of myself as being on the cusp between black and white and colour, but I am. And it made a whole difference. I have to say I love the black and whites because the lighting in the black and whites is so wonderful. I still love black and white movies. And I think in black and white, they are more capable of looking a woman of making a woman look beautiful than in colour. It's amazing. It's got something to do with the shading that they do.
And they were, of course, they were film directors, weren't they? People like Roy Warbaker and Charlie
I can't
Crichton.
begin to tell you. I wish I'd known then, which I didn't. I just didn't. And it's a deep regret of mine. And I hope they were wonderful directors, wonderful. And now I switch on to 117 on my television, and I hope you do too, because it's filled with the most wonderful early British movies that these guys directed. And what happened was that the British film industry was dying, and so they moved into television. And so I was working with these brilliant men, and I didn't know it, and that is a great regret of mine, because I would have paid them homage had I known.
The show has a fantastic longevity, because I think it's very witty, it's very charming, it's sort of timeless because it's not really set in a recognisable 60s present, it's sort of an exaggerated version. But the character of Emma Peel herself has outgrown everything, and here we are 50 years later, and it's still it still has resonance and ripples. I mean, how do you feel about that?
Well, grateful. But also, yes, she was ahead of her time. I wish it was as a result of the writers being ahead of their time, but they weren't. The fact of the matter is that suddenly they had Patrick Macnee and one other guy, and I can't remember his name.
Ian Hendry.
Playing it. Ian Hendry left all of a sudden, and they cast Honor Blackman, who's wonderful, in the part, and they didn't change the script because they didn't have time. So suddenly Honor had all these sort of masculine attributes. She was suddenly able to look after herself, handle a gun, fight anything and anybody, and it grew. And it's not because they were way ahead of their time and clever. It was a very happy accident, and for which they were eternally grateful and never actually spoke the truth about it. Of course, they wouldn't. But yes, so quite by accident, and I take no credit for it, she became this avant-garde woman. And dear God, was I lucky to get the chance to play this woman. Yes, I was. And she became, for the years afterwards, people came up to me and said, you were my heroine, and me and Emma. You encouraged me to try this and to do that. And I truly do think, without over-embellishing her influence, I truly do think that she was a very, very potent influence in women claiming their place in the world. I do.
Yeah, I believe so. And also, she had everything. She had the physicality, but she had the brains, and that was the other things. And then I love the way that in most of the episodes, it's patently obvious that she's much brighter than Steve.
Yes, but she's clever enough not to show it.
Now, one of the things that happens in the run of the Avengers is there are some amazing guest stars.
Oh,
in the show we're going to see in the second part, you've got Peter Cushing, but there's Christopher Lee and Michael Gough. Virtually anyone.
And it was absolutely astonishing. A, because it was good, and because they would be contracted for maybe a fortnight and get properly paid, and they would be in a hit show. All these people, Ronnie Corbett. It's just absolutely wonderful. And it was my joy, I have to say, because each episode had these wonderful people in it, and they gave it a special flavour, which added to it. And I was so grateful to them for saying yes and joining us. It was I have to say, a privilege to work with these people.
And they kept coming, week after week after week, and they must have just come in for a couple of weeks. And I just wondered afterwards, almost anything you did after that, you must have already known the person.
Yes, I sort of met them all over again, yeah. A job. Also, I have a house in France, which I love. I love France and the French. And I bought this house when I was, how old was I? I was 60 when I bought this house. And I'd always despaired that I never spoke French properly. I thought French is such a wonderful language, I really want to speak it. And so I took myself off to the Lycée Français, and I was the oldest person there by a long way. And there was another girl in the class, she was called Eugénie, and the professor said to all of us, our first class, she said, how good is your French? And I said, mine's school, just basic school, absolutely dreadful. And this beautiful girl, when asked the question, she said, well, I know 2 words, champagne and Deauville. And I thought, that's all you need, darling. Anyway, I love France. My French is much better now. Tell them. So I would love to do, oh God, yeah, I'd love to do a film in France. Yes, we did. He was a very good actor. He was a really good actor. I mean, that film was absolutely, it was such fun. Because apart from anything else, I got to know Vincent Price, who is adorable, was adorable. And in all those terrible trouble with his feet, and in all those Shakespearean scenes when he was sort of sounding, my goodness, he would have been a wonderful Shakespearean actor. He had carpet slippers on. That was the film in which he and Coral Brown met and then eventually married. And I played Cupid in that particular relationship because Vincent asked me to go to some sort of, it was a charity evening. And I said, yes, of course. And together we went. And then in the interval, Coral Brown was in the loo next to me. And I heard this voice saying, it's a long time since I've fancied a man of my own age. But I fancy Vincent Price. So on the way home, Vincent said to me, did you know it's Coral's birthday next week? And I said, yes, I did know. And he said, I don't know what to get her for a present. Now, I loved Vincent, but he was mean as mouse shit. And I said to him, you have it on your person and it won't cost you a penny. And that's what happened. And Coral rang me after it happened and she said, we're sitting on the edge of the bed and our combined ages are 174. So that was my good deed.
And talking of Theatre of Blood, of course, your daughter played the role on stage.
My girlie, who's here tonight, played it at the National Theatre. And she's also in, I do hope you watch it because it's brilliant, the Detectorists on the television, and she got me a job on it. So I'm playing her mother. That's a good question. It's a really good question. Isn't it awful to say no? I tell you why, because Euripides, it's sort of, he wrote about the human condition. He wrote about this woman scorned in such an elemental way. Nobody else has done it. Nobody else. It becomes sort of domestic, but his interpretation was not domestic. It was kind of worldwide, totally encompassing. And the extraordinary thing about that production was it started small at the Almeida, and then we went to the West End, and then we went to Broadway. And we were sellout on Broadway, a 2,000-year-old play. And I begged the producers to put Euripides' name up in lights. But they wouldn't do it, because they didn't see the point. I did. 2,000 years, and he's on Broadway, a sellout. And that's the miracle of the theatre.
He's no Euripides, but you had a lot of good writers on the Avengers as well. You had Brian Clements and Terence Feely.
Brian Clements was brilliant.
Dennis Spooner and other people like
brilliant. Well, I wasn't working every day, which I was in the series, if you know what I mean. Also, they had pots of money to spend on the Bond, which we didn't on the Avengers. And it was, I loved being on the Bond, I really did. I mean, I had a jolly good part. I knew why I was there, because George was the amateur, and I was there to give it some welly, and to sustain him and to help him. And I hope when you see the thing, that's what I'm doing. It all fell to pieces when George, oh goodness, I won't go into it, you know. But it's interesting because it's a very popular film. People love it. And George was not bad. He was not. He was just boring off.
He was badly advised as well, I think.
Absolutely. I don't know who was advising. I don't think he had advised somebody. Oh, you are sweet. Would I dare? No, absolutely not. It's not my style at all. No, I was leaving, and I wished her every success, I promise you. No, it's very interesting. And I think it still exists, because there's a schism between television and film. I think people, the people that the producers in film, are very chary about using people who have a television reputation. And I can only offer you, I mean, I think I am a representative of that from way back, but I can only offer you Friends, all those guys in Friends, and various other mega television series. You will find that very, very few people actually then have a career in films. And I have no idea why, but it exists. And it's quite good that you pointed it out and that it's out there. I did meet Betty Davis, who was singularly uninterested in meeting me. And that's the only thing. But all I can tell you is that I watch these movies, these Elstree movies, now, and oh my God, it's wonderful, because I see all these people, not that I worked with, that I recognize from the movies I watched when I was young. And it's wonderful. I salute them all with great adulation, because they're wonderful actors and actresses. Elstree, I've just been working in, doing Apocalypse.
You, Me and the Apocalypse.
You, Me and the Apocalypse.
Which was Apocalypse Slough.
They changed it. Somebody lost their sense of humor. And what else? Oh, yes, so the studio's still going, and it's absolutely wonderful. I mean, it's historic, that place. Michael Balkan and Pressburger and these people. It's wonderful, and long may it last. It was great. Oh, it was fun. Rachel's here. She vouched for the fact that we could hardly keep a straight face. Mark Gatiss had worked with me on All About My Mother, the Almodovar interpretation of the film at the Old Vic, and worked with Rachie on The Recruiting Officer, and he decided to write an episode for us. And poor Rachie, she had to be blind in it, so she had to wear these things, and it was just awful. And I would say, "Oh, do stop clutching at my shirt, at my skirt. I hate people who hang on like that." And there's Rachel, and we just didn't we, Rach? We just kept laughing. I mean, I do have to say, people get serious about the job, and it is serious. It's very, very serious, because it's a communion between you, the audience, and us, the actors. But at the same time, one of my real needs is to have fun and to laugh and to enjoy it. And I really enjoyed doing that, loved it. And I do hope we work together again.
Well, I'd like to thank you very much. That's fantastic you've come here and talked to us about this. We're going to have one more clip, but before that, I'd like to get your thanks to Dame Diana and to lead her off stage. So, ladies and gentlemen, Dame Diana Rigg.
Thank you.